Welcome to Canucks After Dark. Here are your hosts, Parker Hallowell and Clay Emo.
Good evening, Vancouver. Welcome back, Canucks After Dark, July the 14th. It's a Wednesday, our second Wednesday episode back-to-back here. And we're keeping up with the Wednesdays for a little bit here because there is going to be so much to talk about over the next couple of weeks. And today is no exception. As always, I am joined by Canuck Clay. How are you doing, Clay?
Parker, I wish that I felt and looked as good as you do right now. I'm a little bit disheveled, but that's okay because I'm disheveled. You guys can see I'm in a different environment. I'm still at my office, just came off a work event, still sweating, just chucked off the tie, but you have my full and undivided attention. I'm happy to be here on a Wednesday night. Yes, it is our July, Wednesdays of July, isn't it?
Yes, because if you guys didn't know, a week from today is the Seattle expansion draft, and
Wow.
2 weeks from today is the opening of free agency. So we will be coming to you live every night that's important, basically, this month, and that is including basically the draft, the expansion draft next Wednesday, next Friday for the NHL draft, the first round, and of course the Wednesday, July 28th. And as always, look, the last couple of weeks, it's been kind of tough. We haven't had a ton to talk about because nothing's really happened, but a lot has happened this week. Duncan Keith, the Abbotsford Canucks, Brandon Sutter, Braden Holtby, Zach Parise, Ryan Suter, Pierre, McGuire. There's so much stuff for us to talk about, and I don't know how we're going to fit it all in an hour, but we are going to do our best. And as always, while you guys are here, we can see you in the chat. And of course, now on our new software, we're able to pull up those comments like this one from Agam saying, Gravac for Abbotsford captain. I love it. So we can see you guys here. We encourage you to keep chatting. And if we need topics later on, which I don't think we will tonight, but of course, as we talk about each topic, we like to get your takes on them, and then we can pull them up on screen and show them. And if you're listening to the audio version, thanks. That's good as well, even though you're not here live. A little less fun for you, but glad to have you on board as well.
No,
Clay.
what a difference. You're right, Parker. What a difference. Because I won't say that we were stretching for topics to talk about, but let's just say the middle of July feels a lot better than the middle of June. Wouldn't you agree, my friend?
Absolutely. And it's also just like everything's happening so fast, right? Because it's a condensed offseason, right? The Stanley Cup was handed out a week ago. And we're at the point where it's like, all right, the new league year literally starts in 2 weeks, right? Like we're 2 weeks away from it being officially the 2021-2022 season. And a ton of stuff has to get done before that can happen. And we just got to hope that we don't run out of time.
You make a good point, because as much as we got excited about these next two and a half weeks, Canucks have been very quiet. Aside from the announcement that we're going to talk about, Canucks have been very quiet over the past couple of days. Now, there's still a couple more days until every team has to submit their expansion, their protected list. So there's could be a trade or two in the works in the next 2 days. There could be a trade or two in the works between the time that we submit our list and the time that Seattle names it. So there's still time for sure. But I don't know what you, Parker. I'm getting a little bit, I don't know if it's antsy or nervous. I just want to see something happen, man.
Yeah, it's just the excitement. And I always get to this thing where it's like there's like news coming and like something's going to happen. And I am nervous and I am excited all at the same time because I'm scared that it's going to all go wrong, but I'm also excited to have something exciting to talk about, whether it's good or bad. So, of course, we've got a lot to talk about, and you said you don't have the document up today, so I basically have to run the show. It depends. Do we want to start with the Vancouver Canucks? This is Canucks After Dark, but around the NHL, there were some more pressing things. Where do you want to start today?
Thank you, Parker, for deferring this one decision to me. Let's go. We are Canucks After Dark. Even if it's, say, in the priority list not as high, I still think we got to start with our bread and butter. So let's go Canucks first, and then we have the rest of the time to talk about the entire league.
Well, hold on. When you talk about the Canucks, now there's a couple things you could be talking about here, because I don't know if you realized, but we are now not only Vancouver Canucks After Dark, but we are now also the Abbotsford Canucks After Dark. Because I guess the Canucks were feeling just so creative over the last couple of months here, really brainstorming all these different names that they could really invigorate the fan base with. And they came up with something so original and just so classy and clean. The Abbotsford Canucks.
Now, this is funny. I'm laughing for a couple of reasons. People say that we get along well, we have good chemistry, and I agree, we do, especially considering we've never met each other in person. And I think it's good because we're both relatively, well, we're both good looking, we're both intelligent, we're both good communicators, but a lot of times we don't always disagree. Like, we seem to have a very similar take. Maybe that's why we get along so well. But I know this is one where you would have loved a different name, and I'm completely fine with this name. I really am.
Yeah. See, the thing is for me is, look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? Like, it really doesn't, but it's just not very fun. And I feel like that's, the Canucks have always sort of had this facade of being sort of not very fun, right? There's always been sort of the, oh, well, the lower bowl's all suits and it's all just a corporate environment and it's all just a big money-making scheme. And now we're getting to, there's not a lot of fun. Now, building a brand wise, it makes sense, right?
Right.
And
right.
I think there's like 7 other teams in the AHL that are doing a similar thing. I just thought it was a fun, a real opportunity to sort of just be like, all right, this is going to be our fun town, right? Abbotsford, we're just gonna have fun, cheap tickets, cheap beer, fun name, fun jerseys. Let's make it a little wacky and have some fun. But they went with, you know what? Let's keep our brand image. Let's stick it all in one sort of. I get it. They teased us. They were like, oh, you know what? Maybe we're gonna go off the board here and do something fun. Aces, Aviators, Avengers, something weird, right? And then they're like, yeah, by the way, no, we were doing this the whole time. Like, it's just the Canucks. Yeah, I don't hate it. I just think it's a missed opportunity for some fun.
So 100%, Parker, I hear where you're coming from about a missed opportunity. I look at that. Yes, you're right. There are 6 other AHL teams that have the same thing. And I do think when a player puts on an Abbotsford Canucks jersey, and I've seen some people talking about it in the chat, we're all Canucks, takes on a whole new meaning. We joked about Canucks After Dark, which I thought about that. I didn't even think about that before we pressed record.
Until I said it.
No, that was very smart then. But I think there's a certain amount of pride that comes with putting on a Canucks jersey, and maybe for we're not talking about a 10-year veteran who gets sent down to Abbotsford, but an up-and-comer, a prospect. Maybe it's not going to make a difference to his play, but I think from an identity standpoint, a branding, a prize standpoint, it doesn't hurt. But yes, I do not disagree that they did miss an opportunity for something different, but they are trying to rebuild this brand after a really tough year. And what better way to do so than to keep the same name and keep it unified. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm okay with it too.
Yeah, and I think Jason Bruff had a good tweet, a good take today, and he was like, I don't care, just develop some good players. And at the end of the day, look, that's all we care about, right? Whether the Canucks, the millionaires, or whatever, the farmers, take your pick. As long as they have a good system in place, they can develop some prospects. That's really all that matters. So at the end of the day, look, there's at least it's in Abbotsford, it's not in Utica. So I think we can sort of take our win there.
And you know what I learned, Parker, over the past 5 days is the venom, the craziness of Canucks Twitter. Notice I didn't say Vancouver Canucks Twitter. Canucks Twitter is already, apropos, part of Abbotsford Canucks, because we know that when they delayed the Friday announcement to today, Wednesday, there are some people that were like, that's cool. They got to do what they got to do, get other ducks in a row. But there are a lot of people that were flipping mad. They were upset. And then they find out it's because of an emergency, a health issue for someone. We don't know who. And now they kind of look a little silly for being so upset. And then even today, I don't know what you're doing at 10 o'clock. I admit I was refreshing the Twitter feed a couple of times, and people were also upset that it was 15 minutes late or whatever. And then they were complaining that it was an underwhelming announcement. Like, what do these people want, man?
Yeah, I think it was. So I remember, I think it was Sakaris who had a tweet last week when it got delayed, and he was like, it's kind of on brand, right? For the Canucks. Yeah. And then it comes out, and then it's like, oh, it was actually a family emergency. I was like, okay, well, that's not a great look. But then the Canucks tweeted out themselves, like, I think it was on like Friday, the Canucks tweeted out on their main account, like, we had to put some finishing touches together or something, right? Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, that's not saying like it's a family emergency. They're just saying like, oh, we just weren't organized enough. And then the Stockton Heat put out a tweet today that was like, it was like, yeah, we would have waited too, or something like that. Like, it was just a bit of shade. And then a lot of people in the comments are like, hey guys, they said it was a family emergency, maybe. But at the end of the day, like, the messaging was so inconsistent. So I'm not gonna get mad over any of that. But just sort of a messy introduction.
Yeah. So we're at 10 o'clock. Were you refreshing, or did you forget about it, or did you remember? Or what
I
were you
was
doing?
busy with work stuff. But I saw after the call I was on, I saw it and I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. It's kind of lame. I kind of expected it because it was sort of the rumor that was floating around from last week.
Yeah.
So I wasn't too angry.
Sure. And I noticed maybe not that your videos or my videos are the basis of all things Twitter, but I didn't see you or me running to our computer or running to our phone to record a video today. I noticed. Yeah.
No, because I mean, I don't know what could I have done to make this interesting, right?
Right.
Like I would be like, oh yeah, they're the same name. They have green jerseys, so that's fun. I'm glad they did that. Honestly, they needed to do something different. I don't love the logo. I just don't. I don't think it looks great on a jersey. Like I don't hate the idea of the Johnny Canuck logo.
Right.
I mean, you look at the jerseys the Giants put out last night. I don't know if you saw those.
Yeah.
That logo looks great. Those jerseys are outstanding. I think this Abbotsford Canucks jersey, barring the logo, I think it's excellent. I like the green. The sleeves are awesome.
The stripe. Yeah.
It looks really good. I just don't love that logo on it. I think they could have done, a different logo. But at the end of the day,
sure. And I know there are a lot of people in our comment section, especially Lucas, which is awesome. They're really big AHL fans and know a lot more than AHL. Than I won't put you in that boat, but definitely more than me. But question for you, Parker: are you going to buy tickets to go see this team?
I'll go to a couple games. Yeah. I'm not gonna get like season tickets or anything.
Yeah.
I think it's about probably a 30 to 45 minute drive for me. So it's not, at the end of the day, it's about the same amount of time for me to get there as it would be to a Vancouver Canucks game. So at this point, it's like, I'll go to a couple games just for the experience, right? To say I went and see what the vibe is like. But I'm not going to be going to every game or anything like that. But I'll definitely swing by for a couple.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see what kind of dent, if at all, this puts into the Canucks season tickets, because I know that it's me and Mike that have seats 1 and 2. The guy who owns seats 3 and 4, who I sometimes do some goofy intermissions with, he actually gave up his Canucks season tickets and instead is going to put his time and energy into the Abbotsford team. Granted, he lives further out there, but I wonder how many people are going to do that.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's cheaper, right?
Yeah.
If all you want to do is see some decent hockey, which, I mean, it's not like you're going to Canucks games for high level hockey at this point. Maybe you go to some AHL games, you're paying maybe a third of the price, especially if you live out there, right? You don't have to. It's not a whole evening thing like it is to make your way out to Vancouver, get into the city. So I kind of get it if you're not like Surrey or Burnaby Coquitlam or West, then it's kind of I can definitely see the value proposition there.
Can you put up? Is it Agam or Agam?
Agam.
Agam, his last two. Imagine your friend says he has Canucks tickets, and it ends up being Abby. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah, and then he says, realistically, the skill level for both teams is the same. You look at the roster from a few years ago when it's not much different.
But in all seriousness, let's say you were a Utica Comets season ticket holder in the past few years, or maybe a few years ago, you would have seen guys like Demko and DiPietro go through. Yeah, there's certain guys that didn't. Those guys that came straight to the NHL, like the Pedersens and Hughes of the world and the Besters. But still, you would have seen a lot of our prospects, and that's cool. If you're into that thing, that's awesome. This is a wonderful opportunity to see our own prospects homegrown in our own town. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it just depends on how many prospects they have.
True.
At this point, right?
Good point.
For a team that's been in a rebuild for 7-8 years, we're kind of the cupboards are getting a little bare already. So especially with some rumors that the 9th overall pick could be in play. Which let's transition to that.
Sure.
I came out. I guess Ian McIntyre said on 650 today that the 9th overall pick is in play. And then, we don't really know what that means, right? Are we talking about, trying to go out and get a really good player for that with that 9th overall pick? Are we talking about shedding a bad salary? Let's sort of run the gamut here, Clay. What do you think of when you see that the 9th overall pick is in play?
I want them to keep it, Parker. I really do. You kind of hinted at it. Once you have Rathbone and Podkolzin playing on the big club this year, who really do you have? Like, I'm interested in Aiden McDonough. I'm interested in Jet Wu, but these aren't game breakers. These aren't franchise changers. We do need to restock. You can't restock if you're trading away first round picks. I get that it might help bring in a free agent. I get that it might help Jim Benning be aggressive, but all things being equal, if they say that there are 9 guys that they like and they have the 9th overall pick, they're going to get a guy they like supposedly. And if a surprise guy goes, we've talked about this last 2 podcasts, then they might have a choice of 2 or 3 guys. So in my heart of hearts, I want them to keep it. I can understand why they're thinking about it, but I want them to keep it.
Yeah, and it's, you look at all the teams that have built contending franchises over the past however many years, right?
Yeah.
You have players on cheap contracts to supplement your, if you can have a guy on an entry level contract in your third line instead of a guy making $2 million, $3 million, right? That opens up just that little bit of extra space to go spend somewhere else and maybe overpay a better player a little bit to get him to come here and start to use that. Now we had a couple of people brought up some decent ones, like Justin in the chat saying there was a rumor saying something like 9th and Eriksson to Detroit for 23rd. And I saw this one as well. I think I saw it on Reddit the other day.
Wow.
And I mean, you look at it and it's like, well, okay, you're going down 14 spots. You're dropping out of like the players who are not sure bets to make the NHL, but usually top 10 in a draft. They're going to play games. They're probably going to play, a few hundred NHL games at worst, usually.
Yeah.
Dropping 14 spots really lessens your odds of getting a star and especially, just a decent role player even. To get rid of the last year of Louis Eriksson's contract, to me, it just seems like, it's just, again, mortgaging the future to try to make your team a little bit better this year. Look, it's $6 million for one more year.
Yeah.
You said the general manager has said we're 2 years away anyways. Who cares about this year then? Let's send him down to the AHL. It's not a $6 million hit. It's a $5 million hit because you can send $1 million down. At that point, is $5 million on your cap for 1 year really worth dropping 14 spots, especially if you still have Beagle, Roussel, all the Luongo recapture. You still have all these things on the books for 1 more year. Let's just wait till next year when all that money gets freed up.
You're right. And we've talked about 18 to 20 million bucks coming up between Eriksson, Roussel, Beagle, Holtby, and the cap recapture penalty. So speaking of which, there might be some other cap recapture penalties, which is pretty exciting. We won't have the only one, but we'll talk about that later. But yes, you're right, Parker. If we're 2 years away, let's not try and speed that up by a year at the risk of losing what could potentially be a top 6 forward or a top 4 D man for sure.
And who do you think's more likely if you're 2 years away? Let's say your window is 2 years from now, and let's say you're trying to compete for a Stanley Cup 2 years, 3 years, and 4 years from now. Who do you think's making a bigger impact? The guy you pick at 9 or the guy you pick at 23? Right? The guy you pick at 23 might be another whole year or 2 extra until he gets to where that 9th overall player might be. Right. So you're just sort of pushing it down the line and lowering your chances of getting a good player.
Sure. And there are exceptions. I saw someone said Brock Besser was 23. And I get that there are certainly exceptions, but we have to talk. You have to play the percentages. And obviously 9th sounds better than 23rd. I agree with you, Parker.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're in agreement. Don't trade the 9th pick, but the fact that it's being floated scares me a little bit. But I guess, we'll have to find out. And like we said, we will have a show Friday, July 23rd, the night of the NHL draft. So if that pick does get moved during that draft, we will have a lot to talk about on that night. Sticking with the Vancouver Canucks, is this the end of the Brandon Sutter era? Edmund says in the chat here, word is that Sutter's not coming back. Is this good or bad? So obviously his contract expired, and we sort of floated the idea of we could bring him back $1 million a year because he's a fine 4th line center at the end of the day. But I remember this is something you said is, do you need Jay Beagle and Brandon Sutter? Because at the end of the day, if you have both of them in your lineup, you probably have an issue at the center position. Let's hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, not much to add from last week where we kind of joked about how they're not similar. They're not identical players, but they're similar. And they're not identical players, but they're redundant. They do a lot of the same things well: pound to kill, defense, leadership, face-offs, and they are also deficient in a lot of same areas, i.e., scoring and skating fast. So I don't know. Yeah, I've heard that that's the biggest change, I guess, with Brandon Sutter since last week, Parker, when we recorded, is that yeah, there's a story out there that I think Elliot Friedman was one who said he's likely not coming back. So I don't go dancing in the street or dancing in my backyard, which we were joking about earlier. I don't do that, but I do think, this is the Canucks showing that they don't have to necessarily re-sign every single one of their respected UFAs, especially if it's at a redundant position.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if you're trying to improve your team, you want to come back next year with a better team, you can't come back with the exact same players, especially when actually I lost it. There we go. Especially if your bottom six was a big issue this season and a big reason that, the team wasn't able to compete this year. If you bring that exact same bottom six back, you're just running it back with guys who are now a year older. Even if it's a few $1 million cheaper, you got to start taking some new bets elsewhere.
Yes, absolutely. So he'll find a team, right? A team will pay him a little bit, maybe not overpay him, say like they would in previous years, but they'll pay him for his leadership, for all the good things we talked about. But we already have guys similar to that, so we don't need to.
Absolutely, fully agreed there. And our last Canucks really related topic was the rumor from Rick Dollywall coming out today on his show saying Seattle is definitely looking at Braden Holtby, saying some teams are calling Jim Benning. Would Vancouver have to retain salary? So Seattle's looking at Holtby. This is weird to me. And I think we went over this, there's a lot of backup goalies that I think are going to be available in the market this summer. So if you're bringing in Braden Holtby for veteran leadership and a guy who can play 40 games, it's like, okay, but you can find someone to do that for a couple $1 million less than what Braden Holtby is making next year at $4.3 million.
Yep.
Now, other teams calling Jim Benning is interesting. And would the Canucks have to retain salary? That's where I start to get a little bit intrigued.
Yeah, this one's weird, man, because I remember, and it just we didn't know each other then, but I'm sure you were saying the same thing. When we signed Holtby for that 2-year contract last summer, we're like, okay, this makes sense. Now we can protect Demko and no worries for this expansion draft. And if Holtby has a really good year or a decent year, Seattle will take him for sure. Then he didn't have a good year. The whole team didn't. And there's no way that Seattle's going to take him in his bloated contract. But then he has a decent April, May, right? A little better, not great, but a little better. And then we start hearing these rumors that Boston may be interested. And now Seattle's going to be interested. I'm surprised. I am. And I don't mind it if it happens, because that's $4.5 million, 5.7 in real money that you don't have to pay. Or I guess that's the whole point of why we may have to retain, though. But I could see why Seattle's thinking this. Let's say that they're not going to get to the salary cap. They're going to have money to spend. You could pair them up with, I think you said Jake Allen, and then I've heard Aiden Hill's name. I've heard put him with two younger guys. He might be that third goalie that might be really good, and he might fight his way onto the roster as a second goalie. Who knows? Yeah,
and I think if any of this were to happen, I think we're looking at happening after. So if Seattle were to take him, which again, I think would be silly, because they can pick someone that's not going to be literally a negative value contract on their books next year. They can pick someone, even like a Highmore, who's going to be literally free on your cap, because you can just send him to the AHL if he's not good enough. Picking that contract up. And the thing is, if Seattle doesn't make that move, if the Canucks were to make that trade, you'd have to think it would happen after July 21st, because the Canucks do have to protect expose a goalie, right? In this case, that's Braden Holtby. Yeah. So if we don't see Seattle pick Holtby, it doesn't mean it's over and they're not going to be able to trade him. That would be one of those things that maybe after, a few days after, before the draft, at the draft, something crazy could happen. What would you be willing to do with Braden Holtby on the salary retention side? Oh, man. It's so tough, Parker, because it sounds like Aquilini has opened the money floodgates, so to speak, and he's willing to spend this year. But when it comes to cap, you can only spend up to 81.5, and every dollar is big. Every dollar counts. We keep talking about these Pettersson Hughes contracts, how it's going to be 13, 14 million combined, and how that only leaves the Canucks with so much, and they have to watch every dollar they spend. So do you want to, I don't know. So if they retain salary,
they don't retain cap, right? They just had to pay out the money. Is that correct?
Well, you'd if you retain salary, you retain half of the cap. So if you were to retain 50%, so he makes 4.3 million.
It counts against your cap too.
Yes. So you could retain 2.15 of that, or you could get another team to do another 50% of the 50% and make it so it's like $1 million. But I don't think they're going to get that complicated.
Okay.
They could, in theory, trade him to a team, keep 2.15 million on the Canucks cap, and then you might actually be able to get some minor asset in return, right? Because the team is now getting a backup goalie that might have starter potential or can at least play 30 games pretty reliably for $2.15 million, maybe a mid-round pick or a late-round pick for that going into the draft on draft day. But then if you're the Canucks, then now you have a spot to fill. Sure, you've gotten $2.15 million off your books, but now you have to use that to bring in a backup goalie who might cost you $1.5 million, $2 million. So this is where it starts to be, are you making moves for the sake of making moves? Or is this actually something that's going to help the team out this year? Now, if it's literally a move that saves you $500,000 this year and nets you a 6th round pick, I mean, sure, do it. Why not? Right? You're going to you're not re-signing Holtby next year anyways, probably, right? You're going to have hopefully DiPietro coming in or a different backup. So I think if we sort of know what Holtby is, a known quantity at this point, probably right around 900 save percentage, probably going to play 30 games behind a starting goalie and probably win 11 of them. So at that point, why not take a shot on maybe a goalie who isn't as proven? Maybe he's only played 100, 150 games total that you can maybe get for just a little bit cheaper. And I mean, he's not going to do much worse at worst, but he might also emerge and play pretty well in a backup role. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, if everything comes together and you can make something happen, go for it. But if not, I mean, again, it's one of those things where it's like, it's almost ready to just ride it out. Like the Louis Eriksson contract. Let's just wait. It's over in a year anyways. And we'll see then.
No, I appreciate you clarifying that retained salary. So that strengthens my point is if you're still at a premium, a free cap space is a premium, why would you want to retain salary? Even, it doesn't make sense to me. Can you please put up Justin's from a couple? No, DiPietro won't be able to handle 20. So here's the thing. You're right. You're going here. If say Seattle does take Holtby and we can't get a veteran, I think we should bring in a veteran to play, like you said, that's done 100 games or so as opposed to DiPietro. We're all excited about DiPietro, but if you say that Demko starts 55 to 60 games, let's say he wins 30 to 35 of those, which is pretty good.
Great.
You still need your backup. As Jeff Patterson says, you need your backup to win 8 to 10 more games, right? Of the 20 that he plays. Is DiPietro that guy? Can DiPietro win half of his games yet? As much as I like him, I'm not convinced that that's the case just yet, especially with a subpar team in front of him for this season.
And he hasn't played a professional game in like a year.
Oh yeah, that too.
Like he literally he hasn't played. So like, are you really going to throw a guy who played in the AHL literally 18 months ago almost at this point and be like, all right, now you need to play 25 NHL games this year. Good luck. Like it's a real risky move that could sort of tank your season if it doesn't go well. So I think, let's say Seattle does take Holtby, then the Canucks need to be working hard to find a guy that can, play 20, 25 games. If DiPietro needs to come up due to an injury and play 4 games, look, that's going to happen to every team. Every team has a goalie get hurt at some point. Third guy comes in, plays a handful of games. It won't kill your season as long as you have 2 decent goalies in front.
By the way, Parker, do you know of any other 47-year-old man who drinks juice boxes?
I did notice that, but hey, it looks like you got, what was that, 60% of your vitamin C in there for the day? So
very good. Yeah.
Great. So you're set.
There's a lot more where that came from, literally. Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Stay hydrated. You. Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Let's keep going through. We're kind of done with the Canucks topics here, but so much stuff happened in the last few days. Basically Sunday forward, it was just news after news after news. And the biggest one is Minnesota buying out the 2 players that they signed together however many years ago for outrageous sums of money. I think what was this 8 years ago they signed these guys like
9 years to 13-year contracts. That's right, because they have 4 left.
Yeah. So this is the thing, right? When you make a buyout like this, where the contracts, had money up front, we're looking at. I have it here. This is just dead cap. So in reality, they would have had to spend. I don't know what their contracts were together. Was it like $15 million a season when you combine them? Something a little more than that.
Yeah, more. Yeah.
Either way, they are now paying out over the next 8 seasons over $50 million to the two of them in just dead money. They're getting nothing out of it. Now, Parise kind of like I didn't surprise me a ton, but Suter's still a solid defenseman, and 4 years left on a contract. You could have waited till next year and cut that length of the buyout in half. But I have the numbers here. So next year, this coming season, it clears up about $10 million in space for them. Right? They're going to pay $4.7 million in dead salary or so. Now, so great, $10 million more to play with going into the season, but now you also lose one of your top defensemen and, a middling forward at least.
Yeah. Old guy.
But then for the 3 years after that, 2022, 2023, $12.7 million in dead cap. 23, 24, $14.74 million. 24, 25, also $14.74 million. So that is 3 years in which probably 2 of those might still have a flat cap on them, or at least one of them, where they are going to be paying bit over $14 million to nobody on their roster, basically cutting their salary cap down to about $68 million bucks. And then after that, the 4 years after that, they're going to be paying about 1 2/3 of $1 million for each of the next 4 years. So the Wild are done, right? Like, how can you they were finally just starting to turn over a new leaf with Kaprizov, and they were looking like they actually could start to compete and start to have a decent roster put together here and make the playoffs. And then we look at it and it's like, okay, well, maybe this year they can do something. They just freed up $10 million, but they do have to sign Kaprizov. But then the 3 years after that, they're going to have to just rebuild. Like they have no money. Like, what are they going to do?
It's ridiculous. And I actually was impressed by Minnesota in the regular season and especially in the playoffs. I thought they could have beat Vegas, and then you look at Kaprizov, you look at Fiala, you look at the fact that these guys, there's potential there. And then, they're not going to be able to do anything. For $15 in whatever, that's almost 20%. $15, $15 million. That's almost 20% in dead cap space. 20%.
It is,
it's ridiculous.
It's literally 18.5% of their salary cap is tied up to players that aren't on their roster. And then it comes out that Kirill Kaprizov was offered, I think, 8 years at 8 or 9 per. So he was offered by the Wild basically a $64 million contract.
Okay.
He said no. He said no to that much guaranteed money because he thinks he's going to be a $10 or $11 million player. What that also says to me is, do you really want to hitch your wagon to this team that literally for the 8 years of your contract that you're signing, they will still be paying Zach Parise and Ryan Suter?
Wow.
At that point, it just doesn't work. like if I'm Kaprizov, I'm thinking, hey, this team's decent and we're going to have some money to play with this year. But then after that, they have $0 for the next 3 years. I have no chance of winning. And he can just leave at that point. And why wouldn't you?
That's so crazy. Imagine if he does. Imagine if he did accept that 8-year, $8 million. So then for, in 3 years from now, that means 23 million of the 82 million salary cap would have been in one player that's playing for them.
Yeah. And a player who's played one NHL season.
So, Parker, help me and help the listeners and the viewers figure this out. Why did Bill Guerin do such a move? Is it because he had to he thought he could maximize it now?
It had to be, right? Because it cleared up over $10 million for this year.
This year, yeah.
But Were you looking at the Wild this year and thinking, oh, they're close, like they're on the edge
No.
of competing? No, they're a bubble team. That would be like the Canucks going into this offseason and saying, all right, we need to trade our first to get rid of this Eriksson contract, get out of these Beagle and Roussel contracts because we're going to bring in a couple more pieces and we're going to go all in this year. It would be a ridiculous move. It wouldn't make any sense. This whole move doesn't make any sense. Like I saw it like all over Twitter is people trying to figure it out. Like it's like Charlie from It's Always Sunny with like the dart or the cork board with all the strings going everywhere. Like, how do these numbers work? They just don't. It doesn't make any sense. But I guess Minnesota they have to just be starting a full on rebuild at this point because they're not going to have any money to bring anyone in to compete for the next 4 years.
Wow. So are you going to Bill Guerin and saying, don't protect me this Saturday?
Maybe.
I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna maybe I want to go to Seattle and be on a team that has some people that make reasonable contracts. I mean, unless they get Braden Holtby, then who knows what they're doing either. But yeah, no, it's a crazy move. It doesn't make any sense to me. And they are literally going to be paying $50 million. I think it was like I added all the numbers. It's like $54 million to two people who aren't going to play for them over the next 8 years.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely crazy. All right. Let's stick with old players, old hockey players. Let's go. Oh, there's two options here. We're going to go with Pekka Rinne announcing his retirement. NHL goal scorer Pekka Rinne announcing his retirement. I mean, literally one of the best goalies over the past 15 years in the NHL. Won a Vezina. I think he's fifth all time in Vezina vote percentage.
Wow.
I think that only goes back to 1980 or so when the Vezina was introduced. But still, over the last 40 years, being number 5, I think Vasilevsky's top 10 already. But yeah, so Pekka Rinne, he's been great for me in fantasy. But announcing his retirement at the age, how old is he? 38? 38 years old.
And Parker, total epitome of kind of underrated, unnoticed. You just rattle off some of his stats, but I would say guys in the past 15 years like Lundqvist and Price and Jonathan Quick, you would say Luongo were much more decorated than Rinne. Not all those guys, some of them won Stanley Cups, but not all of them. And of course, Rinne never won a Stanley Cup, got close. But I think really underappreciated. He's just so good, so big, so efficient with his movement. And I've heard from all the things I've heard, like a really good person too. Very likable. Yeah, it's too bad, but I don't even know. Did he have a good year last year? I didn't look it up.
He played 24 games, 284 goals against average, 907 save percentage. So respectable, but a low tier starter still. He could have come back and made a few more $1 million, but I guess I think he made enough money in his career where, I mean, we don't see Nashville, competing for a cup this year probably. So at this point, retiring a Predator, 15 seasons in the NHL, overall excellent career. That 1 year we had a 930 save percentage. Just an excellent goalie for about 13 out of his 15 seasons. An 8th round pick in 2004.
Wow, we don't have those anymore.
Nope.
I see a lot of people in the chat saying that he's automatic Hall of Fame material. I would say he's Hall of Fame material. I don't know if he's automatic. There are a lot of good players that aren't getting. I even saw an article in The Athletic that's saying the Sedins are up for getting in, but they might not because it's a combination of 2 years this year because there's no induction class last year. So you never know. But
yeah, I think he gets in. He might not be first ballot. But I think at the end of the day, look, he was one of the best. He was one of the best in the world at his position for a prolonged period of time. He played for teams that were never really excellent. Yeah, I mean, they had that 1 year where they made the Stanley Cup final against Pittsburgh, but no one really expected them to win it. It was kind of like, all right, Pittsburgh's just going to win another one, and Nashville gave it a good run, kind of like Montreal this year, right? Sort of a similar, it didn't look like they were gonna win it. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, he played. He had, I think, 8 playoff appearances, 8 years in the playoffs out of 15. Just not the best team in front of him. You look at Luongo, who never won a Vezina, but he played for the Canucks through their stretch of the best teams in history for the Canucks.
Yeah.
So he got a little more notoriety, and then the gold medal and all that stuff. And I think Rinne just never really got that chance.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was thinking about Luongo versus Rinne in my head too, and I'd say the peak Canucks of 10 or 11 years ago, yeah, they had some good guys on defense, but they had good offense, right? The Sedins and Kessler and Burrows. Whereas Nashville teams, you always think of their defense first. When Subban was there, you think of Ekholm now, you think of Ellis now, and you think of other guys. Yeah, Yossi, of course, yes. And you don't really think of their offensive guys. Yeah, Philip Forsberg's good. Duchesne was good when he was there, and Johansson's good, but none of them are massive. So is it a product of him being really good? Is it a product of his defense being really good? Or likely a combination, bit of column A, bit of column B? But yeah, they weren't the most exciting, sexiest, flashiest team, and maybe that's another reason why he didn't get, say, as much credit or notoriety as the other goalies we've talked about.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of former Nashville Predators, at this point, Shea Weber looks like he'll be exposed in the Seattle expansion draft due to injury concerns. Now, not often that you see a captain of a team get exposed in an expansion draft.
Yeah.
But it looks like, he's got a lot of injury issues. I don't remember exactly what they were, but I think it was like 3 different bad issues.
Talk me through this one, Parker, because I wasn't on Twitter tonight because of my work event, but I heard about it just as I was driving in to work this evening. So yeah, all I heard was injury, and I heard going to miss next season, and I heard won't be protected.
Yeah. So I'm getting this from Friedman on Sportsnet's website here. A left foot / ankle problem that has threatened his career. He missed 2 weeks with an injury in February 2020 there. He had surgery in March 2018 to repair tendons in that area. There's been a worry for some time that this problem would become too much to handle. He also had a thumb injury in the postseason, which is why he didn't play in the end of the regular season. It's believed to be significant as well. He had surgery for a meniscus tear in his knee in July of 2018. At the end of the day, he's just has so many health issues. And look, if you have a foot or an ankle injury that is career threatening, it's going to take a while to heal. And they've said it's likely that he doesn't even play next season. So at this point, exposing him makes sense, right? Because Seattle's not going to take a shot on that contract, right? It doesn't make sense. So this way, this would allow you to then go and protect Jeff Petrie, Ben Sherratt, Joel Edmondson. You can then get all 3 of those guys protected instead of maybe losing Sherratt or Edmondson while protecting Weber. So in my mind, makes sense from the Marc Bergevin side. But yeah, it just sucks to hear that Shea Weber is going to be probably sidelined for all of next season.
So is it true, Parker, that if he retires because of his injuries, is Nashville going to get hit with a cap recapture penalty?
I don't think that's what would happen because I think he would just go on to LTI most likely. Similar to what Luongo did until he didn't. I think at that point they would just say, all right, he can't play, because if you have a severe ankle injury that you're going to have to get surgery on, or foot injury that you have to get surgery on, and it's going to make you miss a season, you can probably play that off until your contract's over as, I'm still not going to play on this because it's that bad. So at the end of the day, I don't think cap recapture is going to happen. I think the Canucks will be the only team to ever be affected by cap recapture. And Shea Weber will just LTI into the sunset unless he's able to come back after next season.
And it's funny, Parker, when I asked that, I didn't look in the comment section. And as I was asking that question, I see Sammy, I see Agam, I see a couple of them writing about it. So I don't know, but it's probably something we should figure out. Yeah.
I think the way the contract was put together, and this is sort of the way it works, is basically if you pay more than the actual cap was. So let's say you sign a guy 10 years, $10 million, to make the math easy. 10 years, $10 million, but you actually pay him, $16 million for the first 3 years of the contract, and then he retires, right?
Yep.
Well, you've now paid him $48 million over 3 years, so you've gained more benefit. Basically, you've paid more than the cap, so
Yep.
they have to go back and take that extra money.
Okay.
So because this contract was so front-loaded by Nashville in this case, Nashville basically was able to pay him a lot more than actually hit their cap. So they would get hit with the cap recapture. I think Montreal might have negative cap recapture at that point because I think they have paid less than his cap hit, but I don't think it works that way. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think they'd actually get salary benefit from it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, Nashville would get hit hard, which is why I don't think it would happen. I think it would just be LTI until the contract runs out.
Yeah, so we're looking at the difference between LTIR versus retiring, obviously, and one triggers the cap recapture penalty. Yes, okay,
Yes.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
All right. So yeah, Shea Weber out, and then our last, the last thing that I had noted here on our long list of topics here, Pierre McGuire. Oh, actually, no, I did. I also did miss a topic, and Agam points it out.
Yeah,
I had this at the top of my list, and
Yeah.
we went Canucks first. This is way more important, and we should have talked about this earlier. That's my bad that I missed it.
Let's
here.
do it. Let's do it now.
Duncan Keith traded to the Edmonton Oilers for Caleb Jones and a 2022 third-round pick, indicating that Duncan Keith had positive value on his contract. That is crazy to me.
But you're telling me, Parker, Chicago must have retained some salary, right? Otherwise, why would Edmonton do it? Chicago must have retained 50% of Duncan Keith's salary, and that's why Edmonton did it, right? Right?
Of course, yeah, because he has $5.5 million left for 2 more years. That's way too much money to be paying a 38, 39, 40-year-old defenseman who is clearly at the end of his playing career, riding off into the sunset. You'd think they'd have to take 50% back to at least get anything.
Of course.
But no, Ken Holland says that they wanted that salary. Give us the money. We want to spend all of our money and take on that cap hit because we want to defy the odds. This makes literally zero sense in my eyes. You can say, oh, well, Duncan Keith knows how to win. Yeah, when he was a way better player. Duncan Keith has all this playoff experience and leadership experience. Yeah, well, he won a cup like 6 years ago, but they haven't done anything since then. He hasn't made the playoffs. Like, what good is knowing how to win in the playoffs if you haven't won in the playoffs in 6 years? It's crazy to me. Look, the real money is next to nothing, I believe. It's literally, I think they're going to have to pay him $3.6 million in real dollars.
Yeah.
So if it's a penny pinching move, whatever. I guess you did great. But you're going to be paying this guy $11 million over the next 2 years who, sure, he was technically Chicago's #1 defenseman this last year because he played like 22 minutes a night. That doesn't mean he was their best defenseman. I don't have the advanced stats up here, but like a 45% Corsi, 44.6 goals for percentage. Like he's not the player he used to be, right? He used to be this two-way force, a guy who could go in and put up, how many points did he have some years? Like 61 points in one season, 69 points in 2009, 2010. That's so good as a defenseman. Last year, 15 points. In 54 games. You're not getting that two-way value. This contract was signed back in literally 11 years ago. This contract was signed on December 3rd, 2009, because they were going to get so much value out of the first 7 years of this 13-year contract. And the end of it would be, we're gonna eat that because it's gonna give us a better chance to win Stanley Cups now. And it worked. But then they're still able to get value for him at the end of it. I don't get it. If I'm an Edmonton Oilers fan, I am so confused. If I'm Connor McDavid, I'm like, what are you doing? This isn't going to help us win. It's just a ridiculous move. Remember when Ken Holland was rumored to maybe be an option for the Canucks? To bring in like a year or two ago. Man, I don't know what else to say. It makes no sense.
Just imagine. It's not a perfect comparison or perfect analogy, but just imagine how elated we would be if we were able to trade Louis Eriksson, $6 million, $5.5 million, right? $6 million salary cap, and then we only owe him 3 or 4 million, or not even, because a lot of his cash has been paid out. And then we get like a third pairing D-man and a 3rd round draft pick. We'd be over the moon. We'd be saying, no, this is make believe land. This is fairy tale land.
We'd be over the moon if we only had to give up a 3rd to get rid of Louis Eriksson, let alone get one.
Yes,
because I think everyone looked at this Duncan Keith deal and said, look, if they're not retaining any salary, then they're gonna have to give up a 2nd round pick or something to get out of these last 2 years. Because $6 million, $5.5 million for a guy who literally has almost no value except for leadership and intangibles. It just doesn't make sense.
And it's just, it just, you kind of said it, leadership, intangibles, experience. We've seen it. People overpay for those type of things. They're important for sure. You can't, and I could see maybe maybe a big part of it was, hey, bring in another locker room leader for the McDavids, the Draisaitos, the Yamamotos of the world, so they can have another veteran, but you're hurting your team by doing this. I don't get it either. I don't get it.
Yeah, and we got people saying free McDavid. McDavid has to ask for a trade at this point. McDavid wants out at this rate. It doesn't. If I'm McDavid, I'm like, look, I'm stuck here for another 5 years, 6 years, and I have a GM who values just overage leaders. Which, I mean, that doesn't mean a lot at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
There's also a quote from Ken Holland about having to overpay a winger in free agency because like the winger market is at a high, so I think someone like a reporter asked him like, are you willing to overpay for a winger? And he's like, absolutely, because it's what you have to do to get a player. And it's like,
wow,
you literally just said, yes, we're going to overpay. It's like, okay, well, maybe instead of seeing this market inefficiency that's going on and being like, well, maybe we can exploit this. Maybe we have a winger who's overvalued by some other teams, instead of being like, well, I guess we got to overpay to get one because that's what the market says. It's like, well, you don't have to. Like, you don't have to do what the market says. You can try to exploit it, try to find a better deal. I think when you're in this old boys club of not good GMs, going from Chiarelli to Ken Holland. This is what they signed up for.
Yeah, I know a team that's got a couple of overpaid wingers, but I don't know if they'd be overvalued though. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, maybe we can get something for a little Antoine Roussel. Maybe get a 2nd round pick back. Look, he only makes $3 million, and it's only one more year. That's just such good salary efficiency.
That's a 2nd round pick right there for sure.
Absolutely, I think Jim's got to get on the phone.
Yes, absolutely, I agree.
Anyways, I think that's all I really have to say about the Duncan Keith trade. It is a resounding win for Chicago, getting value and taking $11 million off the books. It is a win all around, and it's a win for the Canucks at the end of the day. Look, it's likely making the Edmonton Oilers worse because they could have used that $5.5 million to bring in 2 equally good players or 1 way better player. And instead, they bring in a 38-year-old Duncan Keith. I think he's 38. Oh, I don't want to do the math. It just tells me the year. 38. His 38th birthday is in 2 days.
Okay. Happy birthday. Yeah.
Yeah, happy birthday, Duncan Keith. Have fun in Edmonton.
All right, let's do 90 seconds on Pierre McGuire and then wind up by taking some questions. So, go for it.
Why? Ottawa, why? What benefit are you getting? Is there no one better suited for this role than Pierre McGuire? Could you not have gone out and said, look, we need some player developers. Let's go look at some young up-and-comers that are developing players in the AHL or even in junior, and let's find someone who's got some new smart ideas instead of, let's get the guy who used to be in management, didn't do a great job, and now is on TV, and he knows literally everything about every player, but that doesn't really help for development, I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
You want to hear something crazy? I've had people on Twitter, not recently, compare me to Pierre McGuire. Hopefully they're not talking about my lack of hair or my glasses, but attitude. They kind of see like his positivity, his jovialness or joy is kind of like mine, but that's where hopefully the similarities end. Truly. Yeah, I don't know much about him. On TV, sometimes I think he's funny, sometimes I think he's a little annoying, but he was fine. I didn't mind him when he did his hits on TSN, but I don't know how much he's got in terms of what he's being hired for.
Right.
Recently.
If you're trying to bring someone in for name recognition and, to as someone be like, well, look, this is a guy who is proven in this field. Pierre McGuire is not your guy, because people don't have a very positive, glowing opinion of Pierre McGuire at all in the NHL.
Yeah.
So like I can't see the angle that this makes sense. I'm sure you could have hired someone for less money to do that job that might have done a better job. But hey, good job, Ottawa. You just keep making excellent decisions. Eugene Melnyk is clearly a mastermind in the hockey world.
Yeah, as goofy as they are in their front office and in their management, they actually are going to have a pretty good team in the next couple of years. We saw a bit of it this year, but it's too bad that their teams, their management's a little goofy.
Yeah. Anyways, that's our time on Pierre McGuire. We're done.
Yeah, that's our time.
We are done with Pierre McGuire. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left in the show. So if you guys have anything that you want to ask us, any topics that we didn't cover, a ton of stuff happened, so it's very easy for us to miss stuff when we're putting the notes together for the show. Like I missed the Duncan Keith thing, even though it was on my notes. If you have questions for us, then we have Nicole saying, did you see the, let me see if I can pull it up. Elias Pettersson shooting some pucks today was good to see. Yes. The fact that he wasn't shooting pucks until today is kind of worrying to me because, this wrist injury that was supposed to be a couple weeks took till July 14th until he could shoot pucks. But at least he's back at it.
Yes. But do we know that this is his first day shooting? Maybe he just didn't post.
I thought I saw something that said he's back shooting pucks again.
Dang it.
Okay. But yeah, he's got 2 months till training camp. He'll be fine.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
He really wants that new contract. That's why he posted that video. Wanted to show that he could still go top shelf, right? Yes, of course.
Oh yeah. I can shoot the puck in a basement into a net, but either way.
You're not gonna make $7 million. Sorry, Parker.
No, I'm not gonna make 12 either.
Good point.
All right, you can grab the next one here.
Let's actually put up Easton's. What do you think Schmidt can fetch? Because I saw some other people asking. So yes, we joked around. We talked about the Duncan Keith trade for about 8 minutes there. Schmidt, he doesn't have the pedigree that Keith does. He does and he doesn't. Like, he's younger, obviously. He's got a lot of potential still. He had a really bad year though, but so did Keith. When you think though that we only had to give up a third rounder for Schmidt, I don't think we're going to get much higher than a third rounder back, quite frankly. And then, as we talked about last week, it's almost like if that happened, if we traded Schmidt away for a third rounder, it's like, well, we had Schmidt for a year basically, and that was the kind of the exactly. So maybe you get a low second. It's so tough to say, but what trade value does he have right now when he said that he wants out? When the Canucks said they're trying to move him, and he didn't have a good year.
Would you rather have Duncan Keith or Nate Schmidt?
I'd rather have Nate Schmidt for sure.
Exactly, and I don't. This is why none of this makes sense to me. It's like. Yeah, like we can look at Schmidt and be like, in a vacuum, it wouldn't, like, he's not going to fetch a lot. His contract's not great. But Duncan Keith just got a third pair defenseman and a third round pick.
Yeah,
we live in a weird world where nothing makes sense between NHL GMs. So I could see Nate Schmidt literally having negative value, and I could see Nate Schmidt getting a late first round pick at this point.
Wow,
because nothing makes sense anymore.
Tough to say. Yep, good point.
Marcus, are the Canucks still considering trading for Sam Reinhart? Now, this was sort of a loose rumor, I think, at best. What would you be interested in bringing in a Sam Reinhart at this point?
It depends, honestly, Parker, on who I talk to and what I listened to last. Like, sometimes I get really excited about a local boy and bring him back, and then it'd be worth it because he's established, second overall pick. And then other times I say, well, maybe, I don't know if it's because he was in Buffalo, but he hasn't really, his stats are okay. They're good, but he's not top of mind for me. And anytime I hear 9th overall pick in that, I kind of want to keep our 9th overall pick for everything we talked about in the first 10 minutes of tonight's podcast.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, look, you're like Sam Reinhart, great. Vancouver kid, only 25 years old. Everything's great there. But yeah, do you want to, again, it's this window that you're trying to make for yourself. The more high picks you have and the more good prospects you have in the system, the longer you can stretch that window out. But you bring in Sam Reinhart, you have to pay him. Well, now suddenly that window gets a little tighter. And every little move you do that pushes you to compete makes that window a little bit tighter. Now, look, it would be a great addition to the team, but at the end of the day, it is probably making your window less likely in the long run.
I agree. Let's end with this one, Lucas, Canucks versus Seattle, because I think that's a good. Did this come out since our last one? I think it did, right?
Yep.
The Seattle preseason. So we know they're playing 6 games. We know 2 of them are against Vancouver. Their first one in Spokane against us, hosting us. And then the last one on October 5th, the last game probably before the regular season, we are hosting them. Would you make the trek down for a preseason game to Washington State?
I would if it wasn't Spokane.
Yeah.
Spokane's very far away.
It's a lot further than Seattle. Yeah, for sure.
I forgot where Spokane was. And my first thing I was like, oh, it's like Everett, right? And I'm like, I'd go to Everett. And then I'm like, wait, no, Spokane's like the opposite side of Washington.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going there for a preseason game. But yeah, I would go probably not for a preseason game unless it was like an hour away.
Yeah.
But if it was like actually in Seattle, then probably not. There's going to be one at Rogers Arena. The last preseason game, I think.
Yes.
Which, maybe I'll swing out to. But at this point, I'd rather go to a regular season one.
Exactly. And it's funny, Parker, that's my dilemma. It's not a dilemma, first world problem. That game, the Seattle in Vancouver at Rogers Arena, is on Tuesday night, October the 5th. Tuesday night's usually my league bowling night. It is a preseason game where traditionally Mike and I give away those tickets, right, to people who usually can't go to regular season games. So there's part of me that says, no, stick to that plan, bowl, give away the tickets, make someone happy. But there's a part of me that will have serious FOMO, right? Am I going to be upset that I missed the very first time the Seattle Kraken were in our arena, even though it's an exhibition game? Tough to say. I guess I got 3 months to figure it out.
I don't think anyone's going to remember the preseason game.
Yeah.
Unless anything goes, unless something crazy happens. Unless Louis Eriksson scores a hat trick. Or Pod Colson does something crazy, right?
Yeah.
But I think, I think everyone's going to remember the first actual important meeting, I'm sure that's, did they say the opener or was that just the preseason opener that they've announced? I don't think the regular season schedule is even put together yet.
Correct.
But if opening night is in Seattle, and it's, opening night against the Canucks, then yeah, that's a game I want to be at because that's going to be, an important game historical wise. And it would just be a cool thing to see the first Kraken game in, the new Climate Pledge Arena.
I could see it happening that Saturday night, October the 9th. I don't know if the season can start that early.
The 12th.
Okay, so it'd have to be the next week. Yeah. But yeah, the Seattle's very first home game, heck, their very first away game could very well be against our Vancouver Canucks.
Absolutely. All right.
Yep.
I think that is a good place for us to wrap up tonight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, and if you missed any part of the show, you're on YouTube. You can just rewind it if you want to watch it tonight, or the podcast version will be up just shortly after the show in the next couple of hours. So if you want to listen on your way to work in the morning, you can do so there. Make sure you go subscribe on the YouTube channel here if you haven't already. Hit the like button and go subscribe to the podcast version. And if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we will read it out during the next show. So make sure you do that. Clay, any parting words here?
Yeah, Fangirl mentioned that we missed Don't Do That. Yes, we did ram right through it, but that's because we had so much to talk about. So maybe missing our favorite staple of our show, maybe don't do that, but that's okay.
Don't do that.
And there you go. Justin says don't do that. But in all seriousness, I could tell, Parker, we had so much to talk about. We ran way past an hour, and that's with basically no prep. Well, I'll give you credit. You did some prep. I just turned my camera on 2 minutes before we started, but we could tell there's a lot to talk about. We did exactly 30 minutes on the Canucks. We did 30 minutes on other NHL news. There's simply going to be more of that to come. And heck, by the time we get together a week from now, we're going to be talking about which Canuck player was lost to the new Seattle Kraken.
Yep. So guys, make sure you are subscribed because literally next Wednesday, July 21st is the day of the expansion draft. And we'll be live at 10 o'clock as usual. And also, of course, 2 days after that, the NHL draft, the first round, will be live for that as well. At 10 o'clock Pacific. And after free agency's first day, we'll be live again at 10 o'clock. So a ton of great shows coming up. It's going to be a ton of fun. And we hope to see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Good night.